The recording has started as well.
Good morning, good afternoon, everyone. This is Stuart Cohen from IGI Cyber Labs. We'll get started in just a second. Thanks so much for attending today's open demo and peer Q&A. We've got some great questions pre-submitted. We're going to walk through a demonstration of the product, but we're just waiting for some of your colleagues to log in to be able to get started. So we'll get started in just a minute or two. So we're going to go ahead and get started. First of all, thank you very much for attending today's session. Thanks so much for our panel of guests that are here to answer any questions that you might have. We have a number of questions that came in advance, and we will get to those in just a couple of minutes. But before we get started, I just want to go through a couple of quick things. If you could advance the slide. As we've talked about, this is an opportunity for not only our MSP partners to be able to invite their prospects and their clients to learn more about Nodeware specifically, but it's also an opportunity for prospects to be able to kind of hear what's on the minds of their peers, whether their peer is an MSP, whether their peer is an end user organization. Whether you're in the IT department or whether you're a CEO, COO, investor in a small business, and you're trying to figure out, what are a few simple steps you can take to make your organization safer and stronger. This is an opportunity to ask those questions, an opportunity to get those answers, see a quick demonstration of the vulnerability management product itself and product management that you can get from it. As it relates to whether it's taking the first steps towards being compliant, whether that's CMMC, whether that's NIST, whether that's CIS 18, or our new partnership with Security Studio and the S2 assessment that they have in place, or whether it's just getting started with, understanding what devices are on your system, what devices are potentially exploitable, as well as how do you get started on the road to a little bit of cyber hygiene, if you will. We'd ask that you submit questions in the question box or in the chat box. We will do that live as well, and we'll go through, as I said, a presentation. We go to the next slide. A couple of things just coming up. We run the SMB educational webinar series. The next one we have is coming up on the 24th for small healthcare organizations. Ryan Cotier, the president of Security Studio, will be on that call with us, talking about some of the things that they're doing to help small healthcare organizations be more secure with the assessment that they have and with the tools that they provide. Once again, these are public service announcements oriented. They are not sales calls. They're not demonstrations of a product, but it's for an opportunity for, once again, end user executives and MSPs to see how they can do a better job of supporting small healthcare organizations. And then we will have Ryan and Mark Perlstein from Helix Storm on our next session on March 3rd on the live demo and peer Q&A session as well. Once again, all about not only educating the SMB marketplace and the leaders, whether you're in IT or security or not, but also for our MSP partners to have the ability to connect with their organizations, connect with their prospects and their networks, to be able to answer questions and help them with these important issues, like small healthcare organizations, and how do they get the support they need. Let's go to the next slide. So
do you want me, or you want to introduce us all first, Stuart? Or?
Yeah. So before we get started, we've got well, we'll go to that for a second. We've got 3 members of the Nodeware team with us. We'll just go back to that slide for a second. Frank is on, as you can see, Frank is our Vice President of Channel Development at IGI Cyber Labs. Brian Drake is our Director of Technical Development, and Mark Klein is one of the development managers and involved with customer success activity. They'll be on today's session, available to answer any questions that come up kind of above and beyond what you might see in the demonstration. We are fortunate enough to have with us Brad Done today. Brad is a solutions engineer at LightPoint Northwest, an MSP partner of ours, who's here to answer any questions specifically about, as an MSP, how do you provide the transition from IT to cybersecurity, some of the issues that might come up, some of the things you might address, and then some areas where, potentially they're using Nodeware to help their constituents with the issues they face. John Harden, we're fortunate to have him back. He's the founder and the head of business operations at Saaslio. John was recently on a webinar with us talking about shadow IT and some of the effects of shadow IT that they are having on organizations today. And with all the questions that we had, we wanted to have him back to be able to answer any questions as it related to, not only vulnerability management, but just the broader protection as it relates to the shadow IT issues. So, one of the first questions we got, came in specifically was, well, can you tell us a little bit about Nodeware? And while we're going to get into the demo and we're going to talk about it, the big differences between Nodeware and some of our competitors, quite frankly, it was originally built 5 years ago by a group of our engineers that are based here in the United States to support our customer and our cybersecurity services business that had been in the IT and services consulting business for some time. And they needed a product that they could use during normal business hours that could run with, little to no network degradation and could provide immediate alerts for, at the time, our vCISO capability, our pen testing capability, and our risk assessment capabilities. The product was developed, as I said, a number of years ago. We instituted the IGI Cyber Labs subsidiary last spring. Nodeware is now primarily sold through channels and through partners available to end users. And it's really focused on exactly that, a simple solution that's easy to install, that's patented. One of the unique patents that we have in this marketplace, in this particular industry, really focused on helping not only organizations with no IT or no security organization, but in some cases, small or large IT or security organizations that are looking at making devices, immediately available to their IT teams from an immediate alerting standpoint. We do continuous scanning, continuous vulnerability management, and it also gives you the ability to identify any new device that comes on the network at any time. So with that, why don't I turn it over to Frank to kind of walk through a bit of a demonstration, and then we'll get to some of the questions that we have.
Perfect. Okay. Thanks, Stuart. And you're able to see the screen, okay? Just making sure we're good. All right.
Yep.
So this is a view. It's our demonstration test site as an MSP. So if you're an MSP, this is what you would see. You could see your customers. If you are an end user that's on and listening, you could see this as well, or see part of the data that you and your MSP are going to share. But we'll just, for all intents and purposes, this is sort of the same elements that will show off here. So as Stuart said, this is a tool for monitoring, for checking your assets and vulnerabilities by device. So as the MSP, you could have multiple customers. You would drill in and look for a specific customer, and we could say, okay, let's look at Dunder Mifflin, and you could see that their overall score compared to the others. And then now, if I want to go in and look at that individual, let me just get them. Sorry, didn't click right. Now we can look at their exact cases. So for this particular customer, you can see that there's 39 of the 59 are online at this point. We've monitored 69 overall. but these 39 are available, and you can see what each individual score is per item. So we'll look at this one for the Ubuntu device. We can see that there's some different levels of vulnerability and risk, and so I'll just look at this medium one to say, in here now we provide the details of the remedies, right? It's not going to do the remediation for you, but it'll give you a lot more detail about what suggestions are, what solutions are available, as well as some other notes and information that you might want to look at. In the last couple months, we've heard a ton of scary news and scary items and fear around the Log4j, and we've been able to implement that into the system so that we can actually find a vulnerable device. For example, this one here, this agent is showing a vulnerability, 2 critical items that need to be looked at, and you can drill down and see what's going on with that device, and you can go from there. So that's really kind of the main sort of drill down that you can do per customer, per asset, and then the specifics within that asset of what's going on and what you might want to look at. All this data is captured in 2 different ways. One is via sensors, and the other is agents. So a sensor can be placed on a network, a virtual sensor, and once it's deployed, it's tracking every single asset on that network. So from the obvious PCs and servers to printers to scanners to cameras, anything that has an IP address, it's going to find and inventory and do a scan for its risk, its vulnerability. And so that's what's provided through here. In addition, for devices that come and go, obviously people working from home or they're in and out of the office, they have a mobile device that's not always on the network, and it could be working remotely. An agent can be deployed for that particular device, and it becomes a credentialed hard asset tracking for that device, wherever it is. If it's on the network, it's going to be reporting up just like if it was on the network. If it's connected to the internet, then it would be reporting and providing that information up through the system. So anyway, that's the agent model. So if that agent comes on and off the network, it can be it could still be tracked from the company perspective. We can go into some more details and sort of descriptions. Brad's had some experience just deploying some agents recently, so he might have some good answers to questions that might come up. I think the other thing I just wanted to call out is the reporting ability here, which is really quite valuable. You can report sort of standard reports. You can just publish them once a month if you like, or you can do and go at, if you want to look at a specific customer, you can do a specific type of report. You can look at we'll look at a network report. I'm going to run this report. Takes just a few seconds, and in that report then will be the details that we just saw in the where'd it go? In the details that when we drill down, that's now going to be in this report. So this one page here, this first page of the report is really kind of what was also, you might have noticed there's an executive summary available. If you're an MSP, you want to share with your customer, or you're internal, you want to share with your IT staff and your executive team, you can produce this one-page summary of the top vulnerabilities, the most common, and also just kind of what the profile is, where are most of them sitting. So that's available and very relevant. You can also, if you go down to the detail pages, you can see the details here that, again, you're not going to want to share. Nobody's going to want to read this in detail, but you have the access to it. And again, this is just displaying what we were drilling down to, and it just shares that same information. So that's sort of the reporting. The other key piece with regards to reporting is how you want and where you want the reporting done. We do have a JSON API, REST API that you can utilize to pull the data into your RMMs or into your other resources. We can also do real-time reporting. So again, the value that Stuart mentioned with having real-time continuous running scans is that during normal business hours, that you're able to immediately find an asset comes on to the network. And so at that point, if you have a new device that enters the network, you can be alerted and track it down and make sure that you're monitoring and taking care of action directly. So I think if there's any questions, Stuart, regarding that. Otherwise, I'll go back to the PowerPoint. I think we can come back to this if people want to see anything specific. But
well, leave it up here for a second. I think it's worth spending a moment talking about the tagging activities that we recently announced, and how people have the ability to not only network segmentation the devices away from critical data, but how the tagging can also work. Mark, would you like to comment a little bit about that and kind of how some of the people are using it from your perspective?
Sure. Excuse me. So we left the tagging option basically open to your individual tagging methodologies. You can either, some choose to do, hey, fix this first. You can create tags pretty much anything you want. You can do it by machine type. So as you see, by default, we're automatically tagging based off of fingerprint, whether it's external, Windows, Linux. So we give you some high-level tags, but we leave it completely open for you to be able to tag, where you could say, this is building 1, or your methodology is completely open as to how you want to do it. And what that allows you to do, once you create the tag and assign it, you can then filter based by clicking on that tag. It would filter that list right down to either externals or building 1 or whatever it is that you decide is part of your methodology. And then you can run an individual report off of just those devices by using the new multi-select feature, which is over in the top left, where you can select all of those filtered devices and then generate a report, apply credentials, pause scanning, and do a couple other bulk features, which the tagging and the multi-select kind of came together. And what it allowed us to do is open up multiple bulk solutions in one. So it's kind of like we solved one problem and it allowed us to fix multiple other things. So that's kind of something released in, I would say, the last 60 days. And as we educate our user community, we find that tagging was one thing that they really can take advantage of, and it's pretty unique to see all the different methodologies.
Well, and I think to that point, it leads to, a couple of critical things. If you're an investor, if you're a CEO, a CFO, a COO of a small or medium-sized business, you want to make sure, first of all, your critical data is protected. You also want to make sure, you want to know what devices have access to that critical data. So if there's a vulnerability issue as it relates to one of those devices, you're immediately notified, and you have the ability to tag off and to group off some of those devices as well. We're going to get back to that in a second, but we got a specific question, and Brad, I'll let you talk about this first, and then we'll go to the other people. But we got asked the question about, are Nodeware services, are there Nodeware services that do not require an agent to be installed on all devices? And maybe you can talk a little bit about, how you've used sensors versus agents, and then we can elaborate a little bit on that.
Yeah. So basically, our standard is we use agents for like workstations, basically anything remote. So think of like, laptops, for example, any endpoints. That's our standard for agents. And sensors are great to get like that holistic view of a network. So think of sensors mostly on servers, things that are stationary. So you can get that overall networking view, and you can kind of connect and get that information, and just get all that right there.
Mark, maybe you want to elaborate a little bit about how people are using sensors for their network devices, and then how people have been using an agent for either a remote device or in some cases, how people are using sensors on their corporate assets that people are using at home to detect their home Wi-Fi maybe exposures.
Sure. I mean, I like to use the analogy: a sensor is one to many, and the agent is a one-to-one. The beautiful part about the agents natively, when you install it, it becomes a credentialed scan, and it can see the local file system, it can read the registry, and it can find some deeper data sets. Particularly, you may have an older version of Chrome browser or an outdated version of Flash, which by default, you can do that same level of scan with a sensor, where you have one appliance that is running a sensor talking to multiple devices on your LAN by enabling credentials. But typically when you get into Nodeware, I like to steer folks, let's set up a sensor, let's scan the entire subnet or subnets, depending on your network configuration, to get the lay of the land. How many devices are truly on your network? Then from that point, you can start to tag those devices. Hey, this is a work from home machine. Maybe you want to tag machines that are work from home and they're remoted in. Then we look at it together as what's the best course of action and what are you looking to gain from Nodeware? What type of data? Is it just you want to just protect outside looking in, or are you more concerned about inside looking out vulnerabilities? So there's a number of ways to do it, but Brian and his team have released multiple agents and multiple flavors, from Windows to Linux to Mac, as well as sensors. So I guess one of the key takeaways is we kind of have a solution for, again, whatever your methodologies of vulnerability management are to become or are. That's really what we've kind of built this around, an open platform that allows you to implement it how it best fits your organization.
Thanks, Mark. Partly with the introduction of the Linux agent a couple of months ago that we rolled out, we had a number of MSPs and a number of clients that were doing a lot of government application development work. They had big application development farms that were using Linux to support some of those application areas. The Linux sensor and the Linux agent has been critical to those organizations. And now with our partnership with Security Studio, we're going to enhance what we're doing from a Linux standpoint to add to Chromebooks. So now the Chromebooks, specifically in the K through 12 environment and higher ed environment, where there are so many of them, will now have the ability to do much more around Chromebook activity to go along with all the Windows devices and the Mac devices. John, we got a question about, how has the world changed with shadow IT and hybrid workforces? Maybe it's worth commenting a little bit about what are some things that people ought to be thinking about as it relates to remote workforce, hybrid workforce, and some of the shadow IT issues that people are facing.
Yeah, Stuart, that's a good question. We get it a lot. I mean, obviously, a couple of years ago, everybody rushed home. We're almost 2 years now forward to organizations sending people home. And a lot of those people were sent home without a strategy, a plan, an IT roadmap on what it meant, because nobody knew what was going to happen. And so what ended up really happening, as we now know, is people brought their work devices home. They quickly downloaded Zoom, or they quickly downloaded some meeting software. And the next thing you know, we're kind of here, right? Like, they've been adopting things and using these work resources and assets in a remote workforce like it's normal. But what's happening is that since people are working at home, they've now introduced their own home networks as part of the vulnerability risk profile. So as you talk about last time when we chatted here, Stuart, all those devices at home, all those IoT connected devices that are now in their wireless network are a potential exposure point. But then, the areas that we really focus on here at Saaslio, which is that software shadow IT asset. It's all those things that employees have now started to self-adopt in their own cloud environments, because they need resources that they have to do or they need cloud resources or cloud web apps to solve their problems at their jobs. So, just like the hardware issue and just like the software issue, the remote workforce is just kind of giving the employees at home more accessibility or more availability to use things that they want. And it's not bad, because we don't want to stifle innovation, but with everybody introducing their own risks into the organization now, tools like Nodeware and tools like Saaslio are built to help solve that problem. It's helped to give visibility to the IT teams where, somebody might be taking a little bit of a guesswork just to figure out what's in their network and infrastructure, or guesswork which is in their cloud and web app infrastructure, and just assuming. Companies like yours and mine try to give real visibility to it, the full picture, not just a kind of a guess.
Well, and John, actually, Stuart, let me just tag on one of the things you were talking about, John, there that Brad, I think, was sort of referencing as well, is that the home network, right? The home vulnerabilities. So this West Coast office is actually my home network, right? So I've added a Windows sensor on my home PC to track, vulnerabilities within my home, right? So a lot of these are, TVs and other various devices and Nest cameras and thermostats, right? But as an executive that's going home, right, somebody could target them, get into their Wi-Fi, boom. It's not that difficult to navigate. But if the customer wants to, add extra security to the home network, they can. It's not an automatic within Nodeware, but it's available as an extension to, again, extend the protection.
To that point, we had a number of members of the Nodeware Advisory Council. Some global CISOs from some large organizations, as well as some other advisors we've had. People at Aflac and Chipotle and Yum Brands and others that not only evaluated Nodeware, to give us some feedback and to help us as an advisory council member, but they also put the sensor on their home device because they wanted to see their home Wi-Fi and they wanted to see what potential were issues for them. If prior to being on a VPN, what were the issues their devices might be exposed to? And it was an interesting, especially the ones in urban environments, all the people that had access to their Wi-Fi that they didn't even know about, separate and distinct from the ones that, the devices they anticipated. So it's becoming more and more of an interesting situation. We're not necessarily in the home security business, but it's interesting. Home Wi-Fis and IoT devices connected is becoming more and more important all the time. Brad, I don't know if you want to elaborate a little bit on, kind of what you're seeing from your customers, both on the network, on their corporate networks, as well as what they might be doing remote. And are you seeing that transition for you?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, obviously with work from home, we're seeing a lot of our customers go off their internal network, and honestly, there's not a lot of protection with home networks these days. So having something like this, will at least give you the peace of mind as an MSP, and it offers something. You can, if something were to happen, you have reporting available to you. You can drill down and get alerting as well. So it really does kind of fill that gap as well.
Terrific. And so we did get a question about, specifically, how do you make money as an MSP? How do you make money with Nodeware? How do you transition, your traditional IT customers to a cybersecurity set of solutions? And Brad, maybe you want to talk about that for a minute, and then John, we can talk about some of the things that we're seeing in the marketplace and how people are reacting to that. Maybe from the small business that's looking to take a couple of steps with what devices are out there, what do they need to protect, a little bit of multi-factor authentication, a little bit of education. And then some, moving up into cyber liability and broader, enterprise risk management, I would say implementations. Brad, maybe you want to comment first.
Yeah, so how do you make money as an MSP deploying this? A couple things. One, it's either included in your service offering as a client, or we, have it as like an add-on option. Which obviously we prefer that. And it helps engage those security conversations with our clients, which is always a good thing. And the other, which, I mean, we haven't done a lot, admittedly, but we do have that prospecting option. So if there's a prospect out there and, you want to impress them, you you want to deploy Nodeware and get that inventory. You want to get that report and show them this is your environment and look at what we can do to help, right? And that's huge opportunity there.
Well, and I think particularly we've seen, I've talked with a lot of MSPs, right? The prospecting, customer might say, oh, we have 100 employees and we have 130 assets. Well, you might set up a plan of action or a management plan that's covering 130, thinking there's only 130. What we find when you run the Nodeware environment, again, because we're tracking everything that's got an IP address, and which anything at that point can be vulnerable. So we track, we'll add 2x to the employee count, sometimes 3. So you need to base your pricing and your model of coverage based on 200 to 300 assets instead of just 130 or 40 that they thought they had. So in addition to finding the data that you can then create your statement of work and your management plan, it also just makes sure that you're purchasing the right tools and pricing it out to your customer appropriately.
That reminds me of something. I was on the phone with one of the executives at one of our MSP partners this morning, and it just reminded me, one of his clients, one has 300 devices and another one has 1,000 devices. And it doesn't make any difference whether all of those devices are on a network and they're implemented with scanners or sensors, or whether they're all remote and they all have agents. We don't charge for the sensors. We don't charge for the agents. You get an unlimited number of those at no additional cost. So if all of your devices are remote, you could put agents on every device at no expense, no incremental expense. And if they're all on the corporate network, they can all be managed by sensors at, once again, no incremental expense. So that's become a great opportunity for them to be able to sell Nodeware to their clients without any incremental expense for those agents or those sensors. And also, once again, they're displacing people that can't run during normal business hours because of the network degradation. So they've got a lot of clients. He was just telling me that a client at a law firm that was demanding they run scans during the day because their clients were demanding, the end user clients of the law firm were demanding they had immediate alerting if anybody got a hold of any of their data at the law firm itself. So the normal business hours is becoming much more and more of a critical item as it relates to vulnerability management, program management, and then as it relates to NIST and the NIST Stage 1 data gathering compliance, the SIS 18 compliance gathering, and others. And John, maybe with that, I'll turn it back over to you. Some of the things you're seeing shadow IT drive changes in the compliance workplace.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think to add to the story that both you, Brad, and Frank have hit on, like how do MSPs make money out of this? I think the first part and the first stage of that opportunity as an MSP is coming to the customer and telling them what they have instead of the age-old being the MSP asking them what they have. Tools like Nodeware and tools like ours help give that full picture. I'm telling you, it's an unparalleled experience when working with MSPs that come to you and say, hey, here's everything you've got. And you get to give them a little bit of a wow or shock or, not intentionally, but maybe a little bit of a fear factor in the sake that I thought I had 100 assets, or I thought I was using these different pieces of application. And to see this whole thing presented in front of you that there's this much more than what you thought, which in our case, and which we found is always the case. There's never been a good guess or the right guess. There's always more. That's the opportunity for you as the MSP to come in and say, hey, like, we want to come in and we want to be proactive on this stuff. We don't want any more guesswork in your organization. And that's where you come in and you start saying, we're not here as just, break fix shop. We're not here to just be another line item cost for you. We're here to actually be a partner in managing your IT. And I think that's kind of as the next generation of MSP starts to evolve, it's a partnership and it's an advisory service on top of IT services. So I think that's how you elevate it. You get away from the guesswork, you get away from the estimates, and you bring in data to back up your practice. And Stuart, you kind of talk about shadow IT and compliance. there isn't a single compliance out there that doesn't have a request for asset management, software asset management, user access management, or any of these other components. You know, if you're going to a compliant organization, whether they're PCI, NIST, HIPAA, FERPA, whatever they may actually be, and they're taking guesswork as their response, like they're putting their compliance at risk, because data is going to be kind of that answer for compliance as we move forward, not, you know, not the guesswork. You have to be able to back up what you're saying you're doing with data. So you can't just say, you know, my employees only access these systems, and here's the ones that are part of my logs, and here's the ones that I have information for. It has to be, here's what we have access to, here's where people are actually getting into it, here's the endpoints they're getting into it from, and here's the data that backs this whole story up. And that makes that compliance conversation a lot easier when you have an entire dashboard of everything, an entire dashboard of compliance information. And we're not in an age-old, you know, point where it's just corporate that can do that now. Small businesses and medium businesses can have access to resources like Nodeware and Saaslio, tighten their security posture or strengthen their security posture by having that visibility, get easy checkboxes on the compliance document, unlock those business problems that they're having, back to MSP's creating revenue, unlock those business problems that those CEOs are finding and that those C-suites are finding because there's so much unknown in their company, and create revenue while increasing security posture. It's the win-win. It's not about creating the revenue for the sake of creating revenue. It's helping that customer by being an advisor. And the data, I think, is that first step to being an advisor. So that's why I like this collaboration, because it's such the full picture. There's no more guesswork if you pull out all the stops within the two systems. So
Yeah,
that's kind of where
Brad,
I think.
I was going to say, Brad, maybe you could talk a little bit about, I mean, you have a lot of healthcare clients in particular, right? Just on that compliance issue.
Yeah, and that's obviously huge for us. And I mean, it's another great use case for Nodeware. Yeah, I mean, when we deploy this for our clients, it's easy. There's no impact on the network, and we get that report, which is huge. Like John was saying, I mean, that's such a key component. You know, it's the data. It's you can't argue that, right? So if there's holes, there's holes. You need to address them, and here's the proof. So it's huge, especially for healthcare, obviously, and dealing with HIPAA.
Yeah, absolutely.
You know, we got a question asked if we could show a little bit more about the reporting. And so, Frank, if you wouldn't mind spending a couple of minutes talking about, you know, the executive report and how it works.
Yeah, sure. So so as I showed in the reporting here, right? So we can generate for any particular customer there's a different type of, you know, different variable reports here. So I'm going to see, I thought I had, yeah, so here's an executive one, just so that it's already there. So this, you know, the executive summary is going to look similar to what I just showed you there from that that other report, which is the top vulnerabilities, the most common, right, and the profile. But what it also provides is a little bit more sort of definition, or at least explanation of what the different terms are that are going on there. So this is something an MSP absolutely could produce at any time and give to their companies to report to their board or to report to executive management in terms of where they're at. And if they did it every 2 weeks, every month, they could show the progression of the improvement of the scoring here. I really didn't actually mention that before, but right, 999 is your ideal, what you're shooting for, and you know, in this case, you know, you can see visually what that means. But again, this is the executive summary. This is the full one, which when we, as I was drilling down again, you can see that, so here's one particular device, right? So that's got that low score. It shows what the critical vulnerability is and what other high elements of vulnerability are available in there. So are not available, but are being captured and tracked. So this reporting is there for you to pull in any given way. And again, here is just shows you the different IP addresses, and you can drill down into any one of these to get to that particular item. So Yeah, lots of information there, just as you need it, and to the level that's needed.
And I'm assuming if I wanted to see all the data on all the devices that were being scanned, I could also get a full report.
Right. That's what I was showing here. This is the this is the full report of every device that's on every asset that's on the network. So you can just see for every one of them has that level of detail. Again, most end user, or any end user, I can say, and most MSPs probably will not ever really need this level of detail, but it's there when you do need it, right? When you need it, you need it. If you don't, then at least you know where to go if you have that need and comes up, and we can, you can get the specifics, and then, again, some of these references are kind of nice, right? Where you can just, just open port information, right? If you wanted to find out about that and just understand that, you can get easily to that data.
If you could pull up just the 2-page executive report for a second with, just scroll down just a little bit, just for a little bit of background. So one of the MSP partners of ours asked if we could basically put together this 2-page report for them, because they were cutting and pasting parts of a much more detailed report into something that they were giving to their clients on a monthly basis. So we worked with a group of the MSPs to build this out, and this is how this got created. And now we've got, not only MSPs rolling this 2-page out every month, but we have large organizations with 5,000 to 10,000 devices using the same thing with their IT department to be able to deploy it and be able to educate their executives on it. And whether they're reporting to their IT director, their CISO, their CIO, or they're just going back to the COO of the organization because the single IT person that supports the group needs some basic information to use. So, John, I see you shaking your head. I thought you were ready to comment on something as it relates to this.
No, he's good. He's just agreeing wholeheartedly.
Yeah. No, I'm just agreeing in the fact that, like, these are the kind of reports that you just start a conversation with during that onboard journey. Like, these kind of things unlock that trust factor that's required for an MSP, because I mean, there's so many burnt customers out there that have worked with MSPs in the past, where the conversation with the MSP is like, we're going to do everything for you, and then by the time they get there and they're with the customer, it's over. But like when you start the relationship with something like this and you say, we're going to work towards the score, we're going to remediate, here's our steps, here's all of that, the relationship's much better and the stickiness goes way through the roof. So I'm just agreeing because I love the fact that these reports are here, because I know what they mean to the customer because I've been on the other side. And I know how this instills that confidence when you're just beginning the relationship with this kind of data and a story and an IT roadmap for progress.
We just had a question come in on the chat, and I'll paraphrase the question. It's a little bit longer, but I'll paraphrase the question of, how do I get my executive who doesn't know anything about IT to get serious about understanding what vulnerabilities are out there? And John, maybe I'll let you go first, and then Brad, I'll let you talk about, how you guys address that as you get, prospects and organizations.
Yeah, from our perspective, I think that you just point to Forbes.com. It's not really that hard, right? I mean, there's not a day that you don't go online and you don't hear about a bank or a hospital or a school or an organization that was part of a data breach or part of some sort of exposure or some sort of cyber event in their organization. And not to say that you need to sell on the fear factor. That's not what I mean. What I'm saying is that it's happening. And I think that the landscape has started to shift to not if, but to when. And the story is much more about strengthening that security posture so that when happens later, because they're not, the attackers out there aren't targeting companies. They're not looking on a list and going, we're going to go after them. It doesn't matter if you're a 3-man shop or a 100-man shop or an enterprise company. They're kind of attacking relentlessly, no matter who you are. So any vulnerability in your organization, any gap that's unknown is an attack vector. And there was a report done in New Zealand that 21% of the attacks out there last year, cyber events, were on shadow IT resources. And they were the resources that nobody knew about. And it's like, if 1/5 of the attacks are happening on things you don't know about, and your response is, that it doesn't add merit, well, I think that that's where you need to look at the data and kind of defend yourself with the data on the executive layer of, you can't protect what you don't see. And everybody knows the first stage of security tenant is visibility. So I think the discussion really needs to shift away from the, we're going to stop an event or stop a cyber event from happening to you. And it needs to be we want to put you in a defense. So if it does, or when it does, you're protected. We want to prevent it from happening as much as possible. So we're going to use these data systems to drive that defense. And so I think it's just a shifting paradigm in the fact that, it's kind of a matter of fact now. It's a world we live in. So you need to protect yourself from it and be ready to respond to it and build a strategy around it, because it's not getting any lighter. They're not attacking less this year. Trust me. Not a single data point supports that.
Well, and I think that kind of, it's a whole nother discussion, and we've had previous webinars about it that people can look on our events page or our YouTube page to find out about. But it's sort of the tie-in to insurance, right? Cybersecurity, insurance, and liability practice that, again, exactly to your point, you can't protect what you don't know is there, and if you the insurance standpoint, they want you to know exactly what's there and what the risk is for it before they're even going to start talking to you, let alone insure you. So I think between our two tools, that a big risk is identified, right, and reported on. That's the critical factor for getting the insurance or needed. Brad, any other perspective from your side with that?
Yeah, I mean, you guys nailed it. There's not much to add, but we are seeing, as an MSP, more customers actually come to us and ask us about security. Ask us, are we actually protected? What are you doing to protect us? And this is when that proactive approach. We follow NIST cybersecurity framework, so we need that whole identify, protect, all those, and this falls in that category perfectly. And we can go to them and show them this is what we're doing, and you are protected if something were to happen, and it just lays the foundation for future conversations, and it puts the customers at ease, being able to prove yourself right.
Yeah, absolutely.
Brian or Mark, maybe you can comment historically, number of devices. I know we've got, multiple millions of devices we've scanned. Any idea percentage-wise how many were sensors versus agents, kind of maybe a couple of years ago, and now that we're a couple of years into COVID and remote and hybrid workforce, how has the mix changed? Any feel for that?
Yeah, I think Brian can probably answer that a little better.
Yeah. Oh, go ahead. I was going to say, I think with each agent release, we see that population growing quite a bit at this point. I mean, sensors are still going to pick up more more assets just by default, because they're finding the IoT devices, the devices you can't install an agent on, your network devices, for instance. But we're seeing the agent growth every time with a new release. We're seeing it quickly make up a bigger percentage of the population. And then a note, I think we've covered this a little bit earlier, but just to reiterate, agents and sensors play really well together. So if you do have a hybrid work environment where you have people on laptops that they take home and do some work, but they're in the office a couple days a week, the sensors are smart enough to ignore the ones with the agents so that they're not wasting resources scanning them as well. And you're not ending up with duplicate assets in your inventory. But yeah, we're certainly seeing a lot of growth with agents, and as Mark pointed out earlier, it's a great way, almost zero configuration in terms of they're pretty self-configuring once you've downloaded the right package, and whether you distribute it individually or through an RMM. Once it's rolled out, they are kind of hands off and just reporting back once a day. So it is a great way to plug into new assets and get the full depth of data that you can get out of Nodeware.
Yeah, just a couple points on that. Nodeware is sold through our partners in blocks of 50, but our partners have the ability to divide up that 50 however they want. So, they can have 10 different customers. If you're an MSP, you can have a block of 50 devices and you can spread it out over 10 customers, or you can have, 2,500 devices over all those blocks, and it's all in one customer. So you have great flexibility with how you do it. And once again, you're not paying for sensors, you're not paying for agents. They're all included with every block of 50 devices that you get. So you have complete flexibility at the end user level. You got complete flexibility at the MSP level. And as you transition to either hybrid workforces or as you relate to or connect to more coming back to work, it doesn't affect the cost of Nodeware. It doesn't affect it on a monthly basis, on an annual basis for how it works for you. So I think that's an important distinction. We wanted to get these up. If you want to contact an MSP, you can get a hold of us and we'll put you in touch with one of our MSP partners if you're an end user organization. If you'd like to contact Brad and ask him any questions as a MSP as well, you're welcome to do that. Same with John and our partnership with Saaslio and the work that they're doing. Want to make sure those are available to you. You can provide, we will provide trials and proof of concepts for both end user organizations and for MSPs. We do ask you to think about, what it is you're evaluating, what it is you're hoping to find out. I'm a big proponent of kind of market-driven, customer-driven issues, and what's the business problem that the end user is trying to solve, and how do we make sure the features and the functions and the benefits and the output, can be quantifiable to solve a business problem. We don't want to get into we're just delivering IT issues and IT solutions. We're actually solving business problems. So I'm a big proponent of business continuity, business availability, and the system side of critical data. So those would be some key points from my standpoint. Brad, we got a couple of minutes, and John, we got a couple of minutes. Any closing comments or thoughts from your standpoint? Brad,
sure.
I'll let you go first.
Yeah. First off, thank you both, Stuart and Frank, for having me on. Believe it or not, I actually enjoy talking about cybersecurity, including vulnerability scanning. And it's actually nice to talk about something that's useful for our clients and can actually be used to bring up security to our clients, which always is a good thing. And it really does help set the tone for our own security practice as an MSP.
Great.
John?
Yeah. And I would say thanks again, of course, Stuart and Frank, for having me on over the last couple of weeks. It's been a pleasure chatting with you guys about the problems out there. I think that as we continue to push, we'll look back here in 12 months, a year from now and go, wow, if people are starting to get it, because really, I think we're starting to see the understanding in the ecosystem that their client security is no longer a upsell, it's no longer a next bucket, it's a table stake nowadays. So, appreciate you having me on, appreciate you getting our thoughts and insights, but I really appreciate the way that you guys run the show and the way that you look at the problem. So always happy to be on board. Great questions for everybody in the audience today.
Yeah, and Stuart, one thing I did forget, ashamedly, that included in the scanning is external URLs. So if you want to add, your own websites and other things into the tracking and into the vulnerability scanning, you can enter in. It doesn't run directly off the sensor. It doesn't go out and find that particularly, but you can enter the URLs that you want to add as assets, and so those are available as well. So just wanted to make sure everybody knew that, and we can provide more details on that if there's questions.
Perfect. Couple of other things. If you're an MSP on today's call and you'd like to invite your prospects to attend the session that we have coming up, you see here on the bottom on March 3rd, we provide custom registration links. So anybody that you want to give that link to through your email campaigns, your websites, your social media activity, we provide those back to those MSPs. So you can invite anybody to your network to hear what Ryan, or to hear what Mark has to say on a session like this. Same is true for Ryan's session coming up on February 24th. It's one of the services we provide for our partners. Those custom registration links allow you to reach out to get access to people like Ryan, to hear what they're doing. It's a public service announcement. It's not a sales call. They can get educated on what's happening around securing small healthcare organizations. And you as an MSP can leverage their industry expertise to be able to do that. Second of all, I want to reiterate, the focus we have is really around, helping small and medium businesses take the first few steps to be safer and to be more secure. It comes back to they have critical data. They need to be able to protect it. We like to say, we ask people a couple of simple questions. Do you want to know when a new device comes on your network that might be exploitable? Or do you want to know what devices on your network are exploitable during normal business hours? If the answer is yes to either one of those two questions, Nodeware is quite frankly a great opportunity for you. And if you're not concerned about either one of those and you think the bad guys are never going to find you, Godspeed. I hope you're right. I hope they don't find you. But if they do, I think, our folks, our partners, have the ability to get you back up and running very quickly. It's all about business continuity. It's all about you running your business and the business issues that you face. It's not about implementing technology in any way, shape, or form. So with that, we hope you'll join our session on securing small healthcare on the 24th. You can register on our website. You can register on LinkedIn. Participate in our LinkedIn groups. We're all about collaboration and building communities of peers. If you'd like to see another open demo, we'll do that on the 3rd. All this will be available on YouTube as well. And once again, if you have any follow-on questions, feel free to contact any of us and we'll get back to you. This is about helping, all boats rise with the tide. That's why we're doing these sessions. And we're trying to educate people, make them aware of what's going on and how we can help them at a very simple, easy, and affordable starting point. So with that,
let me just reiterate, the partner at IGICyberlabs.com. If anybody has questions, that'll come to me and one of our colleagues, and we'll be able to respond. So just want to provide that out there again.
Perfect. And if John or Brad, if you want to put your contact information in the chat, that would be great. Otherwise, we'll make sure we get that information out to everybody, for anybody who wants to get to you directly.
Okay.
Oh, hold on. That may be you typing. It is. But anyway, I just want to make sure we didn't get one last minute question. I want to thank everybody for their time. You now have the contact information for John and for Brad, and you can contact us through Nodeware, through partners at IGICyberlabs.com. I want to thank you for your time. We'll give you a couple minutes back, and everybody have a great Thursday, and we'll talk to you soon. Bye-bye.
Okay, it should be stopped.